Star Wars Battlefront 3 is a rumored upcoming action shooter video game that is being developed by EA DICE and published by EA. The title is the follow-up to 2017's Battlefront 2 and could be one of the final games EA releases while they still have exclusivity for making games in the Star Wars universe. Recently, rumors have circulated DICE could be secretly working on Battlefront 3, so let's break down the rumors, what EA has said about the project, and how the recently announced Lucasfilm Games fits into all of this. As always, all the sources will be linked in the description below, so make sure to check those out and support those original articles. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Fonct2, and with that out of the way, let's get into everything we know about Star Wars Battlefront 3. We need to start by discussing the hesitation the team has faced with making Battlefront 3. The team has stated throughout 2020 that the team was approaching the end of development for Battlefront 2, and the final update for the game was going to be released in April of 2020, and the team was moving on to start development of Battlefield 6, which at this point is confirmed and has already been promised by EA to their shareholders. I've seen some discussion that DICE is actually working on Battlefront 3 instead of Battlefield 6, but that doesn't seem to be the case because EA once again has shareholders they're promising to, and things have already been said. So they are making Battlefield 6, but it's not completely out of the question that Battlefront 3 could come later down the line. And it helps that Battlefield 6 is going to be released sometime this year unless it's delayed due to some unforeseen circumstances. And in 2019, the game designer Dennis Bronval did an interview with PC Games N and discussed why the team is still hesitant for working on Star Wars Battlefront 3 and sequels in general. He says, quote, "Sequels are probably still viable, otherwise people wouldn't be doing them, but it's not the same hunger as it used to be." He goes on further and says the game industry has progressed past traditional sequels where now teams are expected to make multiple DLCs for the same game, and instead of saving bigger bug fixes for sequels, instead now teams have the tools to fix the problems for the current game and not push it off to the sequels. And then he talks about doing this with Battlefront 2, where there were a lot of issues that traditionally they would have saved for Battlefield 3 to fix, but because people want to continue supporting this game and keep playing this game, the team worked harder to make it as polished as possible before finally deciding to move on to something new. And if you want to be optimistic about Battlefront 3, it was actually teased back in 2018 during an earnings call with the CFO of EA, Blake Jorgensen. He was directly asked about Battlefront 3 and responded saying, quote, "We have not obviously announced product for our fiscal 2020 yet, but remember that we have a Star Wars action game that the Respawn team has already been working on for the last couple of years." And he closed out by saying, "We haven't decided exact timing for another Battlefront yet, but clearly the next big Star Wars game would be the action game in fiscal 2020. And while this didn't confirm the game, it did confirm that EA was at least having conversations about continuing the franchise. And even in 2018, the team wasn't sure about the success of continuing it and if it would be worth it. If we look back at Battlefront 2, they had a very rocky launch where they were plagued with problems with microtransactions and not enough content, but after a ton of development changes and free updates and listening to the community, I would argue it has turned into one of the most entertaining Star Wars games and has been one of the more interesting games to play in 2020 and 2021. And he does say the next Star Wars game we would expect was in fiscal 2020, which ended up being Star Wars Squadrons. So this means even if EA did decide to continue Battlefront, we would still be years away at this point because of the sheer nature of developing a product like this and getting it ready for release. And the final news about a sequel comes from the Bespin Bulletin, who is a known Star Wars insider and has a good track record when it comes to Star Wars information. In April of 2020, they said that a third Battlefront game is not coming soon, and that they have been hearing behind the scenes that the team is moving on to work on Battlefield 6, which we already mostly knew, and that the final games EA will release under their Star Wars deal will most likely be Project Maverick, which we now know is Star Wars Squadrons, which released in October, the Jedi Fallen Order sequel, and one other action game. And they speculate further that DICE could potentially work on another Battlefront, but EA would most likely need reassurance that they could continue to have access to the Star Wars IP, which at this point was not a guarantee, and it wouldn't make sense for EA to start a project if they weren't sure they were going to lose the IP and then wouldn't be able to publish it and make money off of it. And Bespin goes on to say even if the deal was extended with EA and Disney, they speculated that the game wouldn't arrive until 2024 or 2025. And I want to say that Bespin usually has good information, but once again, because of this insider information, things change and they don't know everything. Like, they thought Project Maverick wouldn't be released until 2021 or 2022, and it ended up releasing this past October, so almost a year or two before what Bespin thought. So it is possible that timelines are further ahead than expected, and we could see a Battlefront 3 way before their estimated 2024 or 2025, but I will touch on that a little bit later. Let's move away from the sequel hesitation EA has had and discuss the rumors that have circulated around the project. A community member on Reddit put together a post gathering all the information we have seen about a lot of the actors coming together for a secret project. They start by saying that multiple actors that worked on Battlefront 2 were seen doing motion capture work and some voiceover for an unannounced project. It started with Yanina, who was Iden Versio in Battlefront 2. She posted throughout November of 2020 some of her mocap gear. She tweeted again with a new post that said, "Different day, different suit. This is one of the coolest weeks of my life." And the final post, also in November, is a selfie that fans say was taken in a motion capture studio, and the location she tagged was in LA. And these tweets by themselves don't mean anything. She is an actor, and it's possible she's just working on a new video game or a new project, and it doesn't necessarily relate to Star Wars. But then Anthony, who played Admiral Versio, had very similar posts. He posted in the beginning of November that he was in a voice recording booth, but once again, no caption was given. He then acted very coy about what he was working on, and fans point to another tweet in his comments that was asking him if what he was working on was Star Wars, and he actually ended up liking it but not responding. Once again though, it doesn't guarantee that it's Star Wars, but it definitely seems to be the case. It was also claimed that Anthony posted a now deleted picture of him in a motion capture studio, and based off other pictures on his account in November, he was also in LA at the time as well. So already now we're having two of the main actors of Battlefront 2 in LA working on motion capture and voiceover. And then things got even more complicated when the last comment came from TJ, who played Del Mico. He uploaded a picture in November of 2020 in a motion capture suit, and once again, fans could place him in LA based off his other pictures. And all of this means there were three major actors from Battlefront 2 that can all be placed in LA in November doing voice acting and motion capture for a project they can't talk about but have hinted it is Star Wars related. The actors then tweeted to each other when Anthony said, quote, "TJ is such a wonderful actor and an amazing human being," and TJ responded back saying, "Right back at you, mate. So lovely seeing and working with you again. On what? We can't reveal, of course." So once again, not only is it just speculation anymore, we know at least two of the actors are working together on some sort of project, and most likely all three are working together on something that is probably Star Wars related. And at this point, speculation is split. Some fans are hoping for Battlefront 3, others are thinking more realistically that it could potentially be some sort of Inferno Squad spin-off title, either a prequel or sequel around Battlefront, but not a multiplayer title. And at the time of recording, it's still unknown what this meetup was for and what they were doing in LA. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but this is what's been really fueling the fire on top of all the other speculation around a Battlefront 3. There's also a tweet I don't want to spend too much time on because for me it comes off as a joke from Pete Vesti, who is a level design director at DICE. And when asked about Battlefront 3, he responded with a gif of someone counting on their fingers up to 3. And a lot of fans have taken this to mean DICE is starting to tease the project, and I say no, it's just a joke. I don't think he really meant anything by it and knows that a lot of the community wants it, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And this leaves us with only one thing to still discuss, and it's EA's exclusivity rights for Star Wars, and if they even have time to finish a Battlefront 3 game given their current time constraints. While the information is not 100% transparent, back in 2013 when the deal was struck between EA and Disney, it was reported that the deal would last until 2023, which means that EA still has around 2 years to release Star Wars games. And we know they are creating Fallen Order 2 plus one other action project. And in January of 2021, it didn't seem like EA was going to continue to have exclusivity, but would still be making Star Wars games, because very recently it was announced that Lucasfilm Games was created, which is set to start off a new generation of Star Wars video games. And it was announced that Ubisoft and Lucasfilm Games are working together on a new Star Wars project, and one in particular might be an open world game. So right away, fans were confused. Does this mean EA is losing their rights to make Star Wars? What's going to happen with Jedi Fallen Order 2? When does the contract run out completely? But then in an updated post, Lucasfilm Games said that EA will still play a big role in the future of Star Wars gaming, and they will continue working with them, and their relationship between the two companies has never been stronger. And they have a number of projects underway with the team at EA. EA also reassured fans in a tweet where they said they still like Star Wars, they're still going to be making Star Wars games, and it just now looks like they won't be the only developer making Star Wars games. So EA will continue to work on projects, but now Lucasfilm Games can bring in Ubisoft, they can bring in developers from Take-Two, they can bring in more developers, so it's not only EA anymore. So what this means is that EA still will be the only developer that can work on them for most likely the next 2 years, and then when it will expire, Disney still wants to work with EA, but also other studios to make games together. And this means EA, now with their extended timeline, could have started early work on Battlefront 3. All of this is speculation, but considering the recent resurgence Battlefront 2 has seen on all platforms because of positive word of mouth and marketing, it has definitely given the game a second chance and life. It's going to be free on the Epic Games Store. So all of this tying together, I think we're going to see a massive resurgence of Battlefront 2, and that could be enough reason for EA to want to revisit the franchise and give fans a third game and include a lot of those fan requested features that were added, like Coruscant, Ahsoka Tano, Mace Windu, and a lot of these other characters or places we wanted, but the developers held off from giving players. And if the actors' rumors about returning is indeed for a Battlefront 3 cameo, I would say we could see a Battlefront 3 well before 2024 or 2025, but this timeline relies on DICE wanting to continue the series, but it could make sense for EA and DICE wanting to capitalize on the next generation of consoles, so they could want to release a Battlefront 3 for the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and PC. So what should we expect from Battlefront 3? I know a lot of it is speculation and rumors at this point, but I would be very surprised if we don't see a Battlefront 3 at some point in the future, and the Battlefront trilogy curse is finally broken. I hope the game doesn't follow the same story and characters as Battlefront 2, and instead are using Inferno Squad maybe as a jumping off point for the story or as a cameo somewhere in the game, and the game takes us someplace new we haven't been before and can kind of get away from these characters and introduce some new ones. Hopefully the team also, as I said, adds many of the fan requested characters and locations, but we will just have to wait and see if any details leak or if any more details are given on the project in the coming years. That's where I'm going to end this video, and that for the most part is everything we know about Star Wars Battlefront 3, and I once again want to reiterate, be very patient about this title and any news coming out about it. As always, make sure to like and share this video, subscribe for weekly gaming news, and I will see you guys in the next one.